a big one. But I can't prove that. It's just my belief system based on what I've seen.
Oh, but proof is important, and you are telling me you did make the statement tonight that in your opinion, even the big, giant, complicated ones were darn well man-made.
Well, Occam's razor says do not multiply entities beyond necessity. If someone can present to me any evidence, again, I'm open to the evidence. If someone can show me any evidence that the bigger ones are somehow made by someone different than the medium ones that I've seen done, I'm willing to see that, but I haven't seen the evidence for that. And I would encourage...
But Doctor, you're making such a claim, against just me, the commoner, who looks at this thing 10 acres big, and it looks like it would have taken millions of man-hours, and even then it would have just seemed impossible for man to have done it without traces, even with the ditches there, the way you were talking about, and all the rest of it. So isn't the burden of proof, if you're going to make this claim, on you? Show us something 10 acres and complicated, and then, then fine. What choice do we have? There
are some on my website that are very large, that we know were filmed and that are man-made. I don't see any difference between those, Art, and any ones that are just slightly larger. I mean, just because you have a larger chicken doesn't mean that it's not related to the smaller chickens. It just means it had more Wheaties.
All right.
And that's my view. But I would just encourage Coast listeners to not believe Dr. Simeon Hein or Michael Glickman, but go out yourself and find a farmer and make your own circle and make your own mind up. I don't want to convince anybody of any position. Make your own mind up.
There is that. First-time caller line. I want to get some callers in. You're on the air with Dr. Simeon Hein. Hello. Hello? Yes.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir.
I apologize for the cell phone signal. My name's Rob. I've just entered Louisville, Kentucky. My question, Doctor, is have any experiments been done on the crop circles to see if there's any simultaneous activity in the circles in different locations or possibly synchronized activity between similar-shaped crop circles at the same time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That brings up another area that we haven't talked about tonight.
All right.
It's the telepathic experiences in crop formations.
All right, let's hear about it.
Yeah, there are many instances, and again, this is something that I'm just relaying to you from things that I've been told by the circle makers. I haven't seen it myself, but I've seen the patterns they've done, where they later found out that a circle that they made, someone had drawn the exact same circle and had never told them about it, and yet they went out and made it, and it had already been drawn 2 weeks ago by someone else. Or other cases, a circle maker had the feeling to go out and make a circle. He later found out the shape he made was the exact shape that a group was meditating upon about a half-mile away. And so I think that's an example of the kind of simultaneity that we see in the crop formations. It's quite interesting.
Is that mind reading or is that mind controlling?
We don't know. We don't know the direction of the causality. Did the group cause that pattern, or did this person have the idea and give it to the group, or is it, parallel universes that's happening simultaneously? I don't know, but it's another interesting phenomenon that happens around these formations.
All right. Doctor, I didn't notice what I would classify as a great deal of love professionally between you and, say, Michael Glickman, and probably quite a bit of the crop circle investigative community in general. Would you think that to be true, not just of Michael Glickman, but of a lot of the mainstream, mainstream, I say, researchers into crop circles? At odds with them at the moment?
I don't feel at odds with them. I feel that we're all entitled to look at the information and come to our own conclusions.
Well, they seem to feel at odds with you then.
Yes, and there's oftentimes in scientific debate and change when people don't agree, and I think that we have the right to disagree respectively. We don't have to call each other names and say foul things about each other. We don't need ad hominem attacks. We don't need to attack each other. We need to look at the evidence, the data, and decide what are these crop formations and what do they mean to us, and how can we interact with them in a way that's beneficial to all of us. I think that's the real question.
Why do you think that Michael, when presented with your question about whether he would be willing to come and observe a demonstration, said no? Why do you think he said no? That shocked me.
This is a position I've never understood either from a lot of the researchers. Why will they not go? We were not the first people that Matt Williams and his group approached. We were the only people that said yes. And we were not seduced. Believe me, we were quite curious. I had heard Michael Glickman and many other researchers say, this cannot be done, and if you can prove otherwise, I'd love to see it. So when I got this opportunity, I jumped on the opportunity. But the case is, I think many researchers are afraid of the truth. they have such a vested interest in people not making them that I think they've lost sight of the real importance of the crop circle phenomena as a whole, because lots of different sources make crop circles, to be honest. And for some reason, they've gotten hooked into just one aspect of the whole phenomena, and they're defending it.
Well, this is rough because crop circle researchers are themselves already way the hell out on a limb with respect to mainstream science. They're way out there.
And then they're maybe afraid of losing.
And here you guys are batting each other around on the end of the limb, and I hear a cracking sound.
I think the whole point is to get to the truth, and I think the public needs to make their own minds up about it. But let me just tell you a quick anecdote about that. After I was involved in watching the Cheryl 2000 formation, a very well-known researcher in England came up to me at a crop circle conference, and she said to me, "What did you see out there, Simeon?" And I told her. And she said, I've known for 5 years they were all man-made. Once I made one with my husband, we knew that they were all man-made. And I said, well, why don't you tell people?
Yes.
She said, people are not ready for the truth. And besides, if I told the truth, some researchers would get very upset, and it might affect their health. And that was the end of the discussion. And the same person later wrote an email to a colleague of mine, said, those who know don't tell. And I don't agree with that point of view. I think it's our job to, in a responsible way, if we uncover a very important truth, like other researchers have done in the past, we made reference to Galileo and Copernicus. I think even though if the mainstream doesn't agree, science is not a popularity contest, okay? It's just not a popularity contest.
All right, let's squeeze one more. In Wildcard Line, you're on the air with Dr. Hein. Hello.
Hello.
I can barely hear you.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
I have a question for your guest. I live up here in Idaho. My name is James, by the way.
Okay.
Up here in Idaho, we have, a lot of wheat fields, corn fields, potato fields, and you have a lot of the good old farmers out there, and they've got their farm dogs with them. My question for your guest is, when you go out there, or when whomever goes out there to make the crops, A, how do you communicate with each other so that you get such a precise formation? And B, how do you do it so that you're so quiet while you're communicating to make such a precise formation that you don't get caught?
All right, those are really good questions. Doctor, they're so large that, how do these people...
I was really surprised to find that they use walkie-talkies.
Walkie-talkie.
Yeah, and they're set to pretty low volume, and they talk into them at a reasonable volume. They dim all of their lights to a high degree. They even put tapes over their LED flashlights, the ones that are often so advertised on Coast that I use all the time. By C. Crane and other companies. Those are taped over with a lot of tape. Even when I was filming once, they said my eyepiece was leaking too much light from the camcorder. That's how sensitive you get. Well, the bottom line is, at 2 a.m., almost everyone's asleep. And so even if there's a little bit of noise out there, you're just not going to hear it inside the house. They have learned how to do this, and they also use the rope when they're using the surveyor's tape.
Yes.
One tug might mean come closer, and two tugs might mean go farther back. And there's different ways of communicating in the dark, kind of like you might imagine the Navy SEALs communicating. You've seen they have hand language and different ways of communicating quietly. It's kind of similar.
So they're like, a SEAL team in the middle of the wheat.
It feels like that sometimes. They're very serious about this. They don't want to get caught because some have been arrested. And Matt Williams...
but
yes.
You see, so many of the researchers say, but there's never been an arrest.
Well, actually, Michael Glickman engineered the arrest of one of the circle makers that wanted to show him how he did it, to Matt Williams. And then Michael's open about it.
Now, wait a minute. Why would Michael have somebody arrested who's doing something for him?
No, he wasn't doing it for Michael, but this researcher wanted to show Michael at one point, and he sent us plans ahead of time. And he sent them to Whitley Strieber. And these plans were later used as evidence against him in a trial, and he had to pay a 150-pound fine. The judge slapped him on the wrist and said, we don't mind if you make crop circles mad, but can you pay the farmer ahead of time? And that was the end of it. But people have been arrested, and they don't want to get caught. And let me go back to one quick thing you said before.
It's going to have to be fast.
Well, most of them don't want to be known. They like us enjoying the mystery of it, and this is why only a few of them have come forward in the past.
Well, listen, my friend, it has been great.
Thank you, Art. I've really enjoyed it, and thanks so much for this show.
You bet. Thank you very much, and good night.
Okay,
I'm going to definitely give a lot of thought to this program tonight and to what's been said on both sides. I'm going to give it a great deal of thought because honestly, previously, and I'm not sure that I've let go of it, my view was with respect to some of these sort of circles. It certainly would have been, and I think I still believe it, impossible for man to have done. Impossible for man to have